Hey breasties, I just wanted to thank all of you so very much for listening to us these past few months. We were so overwhelmed with gratitude to learn that we have listeners all across the globe, including at least one in Austria where, fun fact, is where I was born. Also ein ganz besonderes Hallihallo an dich, meine liebe Österreicher. That's just a little special shout out for you. We could not have come this far without you, breasties. Like a good bra, you've supported us through every episode, and I just wanted to let you know how you can help our baby podcast grow. We recently launched a Patreon where you can become a patron and get access to ad-free episodes as well as some bonuses we're still cooking up for you. We have $5, $10, and $20 per month levels. Every little bit helps, and you can sign up at our website at theverybreastpodcastever.com. If you're not in a position to donate right now, that's okay too. You can still help us by following us on Instagram, sharing our content, engaging with us, recommending guests to us, and most importantly, telling your breasties about the Very Breast Podcast Ever. That's my story, breasties. Back to the show. This is a show about breasts and the people who have them. From bras and sexuality to health and everyday life, this is the Very Breast Podcast Ever. Hey breasties, my name is Nadia Figueroa and I'm a bra designer. From me and our producer Alyssa McHugh, welcome to the Very Breast Podcast Ever. As I record this, National Breast Cancer Awareness Month is coming to a close. And although we were a little delayed in bringing you these episodes, we think it's important to raise awareness for this cause all the time. Every month, every day. Because breast cancer doesn't discriminate. It doesn't care about our pink ribbons or how many miles we march, and we can't protect ourselves from this disease with quarantines, masks, or vaccines. Yet. In some exciting news in the world of breast health, the Cleveland Clinic actually just announced that they are beginning human trials in a vaccine designed to prevent triple-negative breast cancer. This form of the disease doesn't respond to hormone therapy or targeted drug therapy, and at this time can only be treated with mastectomies. It accounts for about 12% of all breast cancer cases and unfortunately kills almost 25% of its victims within 5 years of diagnosis. So this potential vaccine is very exciting. But as I'm recording this, the trial is not expected to be complete until September of 2022. So for now, our best bet in protecting our breasts is early detection. In our last episode, I went off on a bit of a tangent on the American Cancer Society. Having done a little more research since then, I still feel the same way. In 2003, the American Cancer Society revised their guidelines regarding not only breast self-exams, but also clinical breast exams, meaning physical exams performed by your doctor. Since we are going to be talking about health and medical issues in this episode, I want to say again, I am not a doctor. I am not a scientist. My opinion on these guidelines is just that, my opinion, and should in no way be taken as medical advice. I should mention also that this change in guidelines applies to people who are of average risk for breast cancer. Now, remember, the average risk of a woman developing breast cancer in her lifetime is 1 in 8. And the ACS defines women of average risk to be someone who, quote, doesn't have a personal history of breast cancer, a strong family history of breast cancer, or a genetic mutation known to increase the risk of breast cancer, such as the BRCA gene. Apparently, studies showed that there was very little evidence that self and clinical breast exams had a role in early detection of breast cancers in women who were also getting regular mammograms. That's fair. A mammogram is far more effective at finding something suspicious than a self-exam. Okay, so who should be getting mammograms? According to the ACS, quote, women between 40 and 44 have the option to start screening with a mammogram every year. Women 45 to 54 should get mammograms every year. Women 55 and older can switch to a mammogram every other year, or they can choose to continue yearly mammograms. Clinical breast exams are not recommended for breast cancer screening among average risk women at any age, end quote. Now, this leaves women under 40 who don't have any known factors that put them at a higher risk for developing breast cancer at kind of a loss, doesn't it? Mammograms are generally not recommended for women in their 20s and 30s because, as we learned from the great Dr. Monica Simmons in our last episode, breast tissue is so dense at those ages that it's harder to see what's going on in there with a mammogram. So, if we're not supposed to be performing regular breast exams on ourselves or clinically, are we supposed to just wait until we're 40 and hope nothing happens till then? Well, not really. The American Cancer Society, the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, and the U.S. Preventive Service Task Force all recommend we practice, quote, breast self-awareness. What this means is that we should be aware of what our breasts generally look and feel like and let our clinicians know if we notice any changes. I've said it before. This is incredibly ambiguous, and we need better guidance. There are conflicting opinions on the issue, though. The National Comprehensive Cancer Network, a not-for-profit alliance of cancer centers, still recommends clinical breast exams every 1 to 3 years for asymptomatic average-risk women ages 25 to 39, and every year for women 40 and older. Well, that's better than nothing, anyway. You can probably guess which school of thought I find myself in. The rationale of not recommending breast self-exams anymore seems to be that they just aren't as effective as mammography, and there's a risk of false positives. According to Susan G. Komen for The Cure, studies found that women who did breast self-exams had more false positive results, leading to nearly twice as many biopsies with negative results, and that breast self-exams did not have much of an effect on survival rates. But look, whether you're doing it to check for cancer or just to get to know your breasts, I think it's important to give yourself a breast exam at least once a month. My personal opinion is getting a false positive is a risk worth taking. Just like other cancers, the more time it has to grow, the more risky breast cancer becomes for the patient. So personally, I'd rather take that risk and annoy my doctor with a false positive. I still lock my door every night, even though it's pretty unlikely someone will break in, right? I wear a seatbelt, I ride my bike with my helmet on, and I check my breasts. Although most of the time breast changes are benign, according to the National Breast Cancer Foundation, 40% of all diagnosed breast cancers are detected by women who feel a lump. There are other things that can happen to our boobs other than just cancer, and it's good to check and make sure they feel the way they normally do. The National Breast Cancer Foundation has a really easy-to-use guide on their website for giving yourself a breast exam, and we will link this guide in our sources as well. Since our breasts change throughout our menstrual cycle, try to do this at the same time every month. I do it a week after my period ends. First, check your breasts in the shower. Use the pads of your 3 middle fingers to apply pressure and press down on the entire breast and armpit area. Check for any lump, thickening, hardened knot, or any other breast changes. Listen to our interview with Dr. Simmons in our last episode for what kinds of lumps to watch out for. Next, check your breasts visually. Stand in front of a mirror and look for any asymmetry that isn't normally there. Any change in contour, swelling, dimpling, or changes in the nipples. Check with your arms up and then at your sides, and contract your pec muscles to see if they look any different than they normally do. Then, lay down and check your breast and armpit area with the pads of your 3 middle fingers again. Finally, squeeze your nipples and check for any lumps or discharge, meaning unusual liquid coming out of your nipples. If you do find something weird, don't panic. 8 out of 10 lumps found in our breasts are non-cancerous. Just be sure to make an appointment with your doctor to get a professional opinion. Our guest this episode is a breast cancer survivor who found her breast cancer during a self-exam just like the one I just described. I'll let her tell you why, but she asked to remain anonymous, so we'll call her X. X was living the dream in 2008. She loved to cook, bake, and work out in her free time. She was into fashion and designer scarves. She took care of herself. She rarely drank, never smoked, and tended to snack on organic broccoli. By all standards, X was in the population that was considered, quote, average risk. She had no significant family history of breast cancer, and most importantly, she was only 32, and so she'd never even had a mammogram. Then, one day, X found a lump in her left breast that would change her life forever. That lump would turn out to be breast cancer, and she was diagnosed with ductal carcinoma in situ. This type of cancer is considered the earliest form of breast cancer. It lives only in the milk ducts and has not spread yet. At this point, this type of cancer is considered non-invasive or pre-invasive, but it still needs to be treated because it can go on to become invasive breast cancer, which can spread to the rest of your body. To this day, X thanks her breast self-exam for catching it at such an early stage. If she hadn't found that lump, we could be telling a very different story today. X shared her story with us, and I think it's important for all of the breasties out there to know it too. You've heard me talk for long enough, so without further ado, please welcome an amazing breast cancer survivor, ex-cancer person, to the Very Breast Podcast Ever. Welcome to the Very Breast Podcast Ever. Usually I ask our guests to introduce themselves and say hi to the breasties out there, but I understand that you would prefer to remain anonymous, right?
Yes, that's true.
So can you tell us a little about your breast story and why you chose to stay anonymous today?
Well, I am a deeply private person, and it's taken me a long time to get to where I can actually talk about the whole breast cancer story openly, and now on this even publicly. But it's a breast cancer story. It's not a me story per se. I'm like the vehicle that it happened within, or that brought it forth, or that brings me here. But that's it. So that's really, like, I don't think me is important to this, as important to the story or my story as the actual experience of the breast cancer and what it entails.
Okay, so let's jump right into it then. When were you diagnosed with breast cancer and how did you find out?
Oh, it was back in 2008, so 13 years ago. Is that, if my math is right?
14?
No, it is
13. It is 13.
13 years ago. And it was in May that year when the diagnosis happened. And how did I find it? I was just doing a regular breast exam, which I did every month because I'm the nerd who actually listens to the doctor when she says, do your breast exams, and actually learned how to do it. And if you were to ask me now, I'd be like, yeah, you just got to feel it till you understand your breast, but I wouldn't be able to tell you necessarily how to do a breast exam, except just know your breast. But I was just feeling my breast. I did it once a month, about a week after my period. And I just, like, at the top of the areola, kind of on the left side, I felt like a little nub or something. So I pushed a little harder and just felt it. And it was like this pea-sized bump that I felt under there, like a dry pea-sized bump. And I thought, that's just weird. So all right. And I was talking to my friend about it, and she's like, you really got to go and see that. You've got to see a doctor. I'm like, yeah, no, I will. You're right. I will. But I just didn't. And I can't tell you why I didn't. I just didn't. And then forgot about it. Here comes the next month. I'm doing the breast exam again. Right side's fine. Go to the left side, and there it is again. I'm like, shoot, that feels bigger. And frankly, I don't know if it really was bigger when I think back on it logically now, but at the time, I swear it felt like it was like a marble size at that point. I'm like, something's not right. And I'm pushing on it, and it's there. It's just there. So
what did it feel like?
Like a hard bump inside. Not like one of those zits without heads, but it was like a hard bump inside. And it was like, just like that dry pea thing I told you about. It was just there. It didn't hurt. It wasn't sticking out. It was just there inside. So I
had to like push down to feel it.
Like a little bit. It wasn't like I pushed very hard. Like these breast exams, when you learn how to do, you really don't have to push too hard. You just got to feel your breast, like push with little pressure. That's it. So I didn't have to push too hard. Fine.
And was it like 1 month it wasn't there, and the next month it was?
Yeah. I don't know if I missed it the months before or what, or maybe that's the point where it was palpable. But
well, isn't it funny how we do these things to protect ourselves, but then we immediately are like, no, it's not going to be that. So we like talk ourselves down, and we're like, I don't need to do anything further. Like, it was just we're like, oh, no. So I think that's like super common. My other takeaway so far is that we should all just be feeling our breasts more. Like, not do it. Like, let's not even call it a breast exam. Let's just start like feeling ourselves up more often. I think I could get to know your breasts more. I think that is a PR message, or like a thing that I could get behind.
100%. Yeah.
Totally. And there's, the whole Feel Your Boobies thing.
Feel Your Boobies is a nonprofit organization founded in 2004 by Lee Hurst, a woman who was diagnosed with stage 1 breast cancer at the young age of 33. She found a lump in her breast accidentally, and it wasn't until 2 years later that a nurse practitioner encouraged her to get a mammogram. Like X, Lee did not think much about her breasts until she was diagnosed with breast cancer. Her experience made her realize that she never really paid that much attention to messages about breast cancer before, so she started this foundation to spread a friendly message to remind women everywhere to feel their boobies. Nice work, Lee.
That was one thing I learned that same year from a nurse she happened to have a badge on that said, feel your boobies. And it was in one of the most horrible moments of this experience of learning this, where I saw that badge on her and I was like, where did you get that? And she took it off and gave it to me. And I was like, oh, thank you. And I'm just looking at it, like, and it just said, feel your boobies. It was the first time I had I'd never thought about my breasts before this, like literally like taking them seriously or anything. They were just part of me and I felt them and that was it. But the feel your boobies thing took me a step outside myself. Like someone else is saying, feel your, and it was a sweet thing too. It was booby, you know? Mm-hmm. So give it a level of levity and friendliness, not scariness.
So what made you finally go to the doctor?
Back to my friend, I'm talking to her again, and she's like, you've really got to go. And I'm like, no, you're right, I've really got to go. At this point, I was scared. I was really scared. So I went, and it was my regular OBG, and she's a really blunt person, and she's just to the point. She's not lovey-dovey, and I love that about her. I don't like doctors who get all fuzzy with you. She's very direct, and she goes, well, it's probably nothing, but you should go get, can't remember if she said a biopsy or, oh no, she said you should go get an x-ray. Go get imaging. So I'm like, okay, fine, it's probably nothing, but I'll go do that. So I was and am a workaholic. So I just scheduled it in between meetings at work. And a week later, I think it was a week later, something like that, I went and got it. And while I was there, I thought I was done. I thought I was finished. They took all the imaging and so on. And I'm sitting there waiting. And a nurse comes out to me, or a technician comes out to me and says, we need to bring you back in to do some more imaging. And I was like, why? She goes, oh, it's just part of this. And I was like, didn't we finish? Aren't we done? And she goes, they found something that they need to look at. Like, I remember she said calcification. I'd never even heard that word. I thought it was something to do with, like, calcification to me had to do with what happens to pipes, like corroded pipes or something, not the body. So I go back, I was already dressed and ready to go, and I undressed, get into this gown, and I was 32 at the time. And I remember looking around me at the women who were in there, and it was all women, and going, I'm in the wrong place. These women are old. Like, and frankly, they're probably my age as I am now, but I was like, these women are just too young to be here. And that's when I felt something not right. So I go in there and they take me into this doctor, and he was showing me this shadowing rather on the picture. And he was saying, so this here, and I recall it was calcification that he said, we need to look into this. We need to get a biopsy. And I'm like, well, why? What could it be? He's like, it could be nothing, but it could also be cancer. And I was like, oh. And I think that was the first time the word cancer came into this, where I was like, shit, this is serious. But okay, so what do we do next? I'm always like, what do we do next? How do we get this? What do we learn from this? What's the next step? Boom, boom, get it done. And he said, so now we've got to set up a biopsy for you. All right, we'll set up a biopsy. Again, no. The only time I'd ever heard of a biopsy was maybe in dermatology, when they like have to biopsy something they take out of your skin or something. I don't know. So I set that appointment up. I think it was also within a week or something like that. And I was getting these appointments fast. They were happening very fast. You didn't have to wait much.
That's never a good sign, right? Like if they're like, we'll take you right now.
Right. Except when you're happy they took you in, because, oh my God, I don't have to wait. And I wasn't registering. You gotta understand, I wasn't thinking, even though he said the word cancer, I'm 32. I'm young, I'm healthy. I wasn't even thinking that. It scared me in the moment, but that was it. So a week later, it must have been, I went in for the biopsy, and I remember I asked the doctor how it was. And back then you didn't Google everything. Like, it wasn't first on your mind to Google something. And she said, oh, it's just a needle. They put it in, it goes in, they take it out, they insert it. So I'm like, all right, fine. A needle, like the needle you can draw blood with, is what I thought. That thing was so thick.
Oh,
it was very thick. It was really, I was like, that's going to go in my breast.
It was long too.
If I recall, it was long. It wasn't.
It's like, probably better that you couldn't Google it. Like, I would almost rather not know going into that. I don't want to I don't want to anticipate that.
Yeah.
Like, I want it to be something I have to just deal with in the moment.
Yeah.
Like, until I'm like laying on the bed and I can't leave. I can't. So I lie down, the nurses, set me up and all. And I think it was a local anesthetic they put on it, something like just to numb it up. And the weirdest thing happened to me when they started this. The needle goes in. I don't remember pain. I don't remember any of that. None of that. Like, I just remember that the needle, like, going, well, that's a freaking big needle. And it went in, and then the nurse is holding my hand, and suddenly like the sound of something happened. And I'm like, what happened? She goes, the power went out. The power on the machine went out. And the needle's in me. And I'm like, what? And I just froze. Yeah, I just froze. I'm like, what? And she goes, this has never happened before. I'm like, that is not consoling to me. But before I knew it, they had it back on. And so it was very traumatizing that they had it back on. Things were fine. They finished the biopsy. And I left, a little shaken, but I decided I'm going to forget about this. Now, I did a lot of I'm going to forget about this. So I said, I'm going to forget about this until they tell me what it is. Probably nothing, like the doctor said. So I was going on vacation the following week. It was May. I was going on vacation with my mom, and I was taking her on a trip to Spain. And we're on this trip, and while we're at the top of the Alhambra Cat Palace. I think of it now. I was like, we had gotten like to the top, there was a courtyard. We were in the courtyard, and my phone rang, and I was like, oh, Mom, listen, I've got to take this. This might be the doctor, because it was the only number that was connected to, that I was connected to. It was my doctor. So pick up. I stepped away from my mother. I pick up, and I don't recall her words. I do not remember what she said or how she said it. I just know that I heard her tell me the biopsy results were cancer. And I don't know what else she said. I just remember that. And my heart dropped. I'm like, are you sure? Are you sure? In my mind, I'm going, are you sure? And again, it was a short call. I don't remember anything except that I walked away from that call knowing I had cancer. And I turned to my mother, who was watching me, and she just knew what it was. And we just sat down by the courtyard, and we just hugged each other. And I don't know if she cried. I don't know if I cried. Maybe we both did. I don't remember. But at some point, a hug finishes, and the hug finished. And we stood up, and I was like, Mom, I don't want to do the rest of this tour. I just want to go back. And she's like, yeah, okay, we'll go back. And we rented a car. And you had mentioned earlier about not speaking Spanish. I don't speak Spanish either, but I did the whole thing in like my broken English and a little bit of my broken English, broken bits of Spanish and so on. But so I never finished the tour. I didn't finish Alhambra. I only had like half of it done.
You still had to like finish your whole vacation after that, right?
We did. Well, so we had 3 days left on the vacation, and my mother gets into, like that mode of, we're going to beat this. We're going to work on this. And she's like, and I know this doctor, and we'll call him, and we'll get your uncle here, and your brother can do this. And and she's going off, and I was dead silent. I was just an absolute, when I think back on it now, I was the one time there's like, I'm a talker, and the one time I can't talk is when I'm hurt or in shock. Like no words don't come out. And I'm driving, and finally I said, Mom, here's what we're going to do. We have 3 days left. We're not going to think about this. We're not going to talk about it. We're just going to erase it. And I'm very good at like truncating things and putting them in blocks and coming to them when the time is ready for them, Mm-hmm. And she just was like, okay, all right. And today I feel bad for what I put her through, because we were actually sharing a room in this trip. And this poor woman was in the same room with me all day. And it's my mother, and she knew it the whole time. But I would not allow, the topic was taboo. We went to dinner with my friends. I was visiting friends there. We went to dinner with my friends. We did a bunch of other stuff. We never talked about it. And she, bless her heart, stuck to it.
I mean, but she's your mom. I wouldn't expect any less from a mom in that situation to like just understand that.
But can you imagine the hell I put her through? Like when I think of it now, I'm like, what?
You didn't put her through any hell, though. I doubt she sees it that way, but totally valid.
Did you tell your friends? Did you tell anyone? You just put it away for 3 days?
I didn't tell anyone. No, my friends there, you mean in Spain?
Yeah.
No, I didn't say anything. So when I first got there, I think I mentioned to her, we were talking about stuff, and I mentioned, this, but when they didn't know. No one knew. And what I didn't want is anybody looking at me and going, oh, or being treated differently.
Mm-hmm.
And that became a theme for me throughout this whole experience. Like, I don't want your pity. I will get this. This is going to get done. This is, and then there's moments where like, it's okay to have someone's pity. And I don't know. Whatever.
It's not pity, but I know what you mean. It's like, because I'm the same way. I hate pity. Like, I do not accept that emotion from anybody. Never.
Right, but sometimes, and I guess sometimes it's just human compassion. We feel for each other.
I think it's also about framing, right? If we look at it as pity, it's going to make us feel some type of way. But if you look at it as empathy, someone's feeling with you.
Yeah. And it's hard in the beginning when you're in absolute shock, and you just, and also it's like, I'm a healthy person. They've got to be wrong. And that's what happened to me afterwards when I got back. And the doctor was like, she's good. I know I had to call when I got back. I went to pick up my results. Back then, it wasn't like now where everything's all the hospitals are connected and so on. So I had to go. I remember getting in a cab from the office, picking up my x-rays. And on the way they're going to tell me we made a mistake. It wasn't you. The files were mixed up. It was wrong. So sorry, we made a mistake. And when they talk about the stages of like shock, denial, grief, whatever they are, they're true. It's real. Like I was like, they're going to tell me it was, and they didn't. They handed me the x-rays. They handed me this everything, and no one said, by the way, it was a mistake. These are your real ones. It didn't happen. I get in a cab and I go to the other doctor, and that was the first surgeon I met who talked to me about my results.
So I understand you saw a few doctors actually away at the beginning of this diagnosis process.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about that? How did you end up choosing your doctors?
I really didn't know. Like today, they're always like, get a second opinion, get a third opinion. I didn't know about any about that back then. It was just like, so I get to this one doctor that was connected with my OBG. So I've got my x-rays, I'm going to him. I get to him. He's an older guy. And that's his nurse is the one who gave me the Feel Your Boobies badge. I get in there, and he hangs up, he's got my pictures, my images hung up in front of him, and he's looking at them, and he's just like shaking his head and making that sound like that. And I'm sitting on this bed in a robe, naked, half naked underneath, and I'm going, in my mind, I haven't asked him, and he doesn't even turn to me, he just goes, it was something to the effect of, you're so young. This is a mastectomy right off. And that was the first time I heard the word mastectomy. Like, think about it. I hadn't even, like, none of this computed to that point. Like,
you were still like accepting you have cancer, you're still processing that.
Yeah. And he was just like, and I'm sure he sees thousands of me. But he was like, this is just bad. This is a mastectomy.
That's when I'm like, though, I wish doctors, that's when I like when doctors do take that like bedside manner approach, though. At times. Like they need to know, because like even if he sees 1,000 patients, like part of his job is to remember that you don't see 1,000 doctors. You don't get told this every day, that this is a moment for you that needs like a little bit of finesse and like
sensitivity.
Right. Yeah. Like, and it's not the nurse's job to fix his, like his bedside manner, but the nurse did walk me through it. And it was like that crying jag or whatever it was I had on Alhambra pales. I just crumpled. It was like mastectomy to me. Like literally, I'm thinking, you're going to chop off my breast. That's it. It's going. And I guess at some point, I don't really remember. I kind of remember how he looked. He was kind of rotund and small, but I don't remember much else except that the nurse took me into this room, I guess, to calm me down or to help me. And they're like, we do have a psychologist on call if you need. I'm like, a psychologist? Like what is happening? And that was a long doctor's visit, I remember. And I walked out of there knowing I needed a mastectomy. And my brother worked not too far from me. And I was so disoriented, like so disoriented. I called him and I just said, look, I've got cancer. And I can't remember, I think my mom might have let my siblings know at that point. I can't remember, but I know she was like, are you okay with me telling them? And I know she did tell them I couldn't do it. I think I also didn't quite believe I had it before this. And so I walked from to where my office was and called my brother, and I'm like, I'm shaking. I can't even go up. So he met me and he sat with me. I don't know what happened after that. I don't remember. I just remember thinking, he'll help me. He'll get me through this today. And I don't recall much after that. But once it sunk in, that's when I was like, I don't like this doctor. Maybe he's wrong. And now when I'm thinking back on this, it's still that denial. They're still not like, no, maybe he's wrong. And that's when it hit me. I've got to go find out about another doctor. And I recalled that my old boss had his wife had had breast cancer. So I called him. And of course, in calling him, I had to tell him, and it was one of the first calls I'd made to somebody outside of my immediate family, or first person people I've spoken to outside my immediate family about this. So I had to get through the shock of him hearing it, but he gave me a doctor's name. And then I don't know where I got a third doctor from. Someone else gave me a third doctor. It was all word of mouth, these doctors that were, it was somebody I worked with at that point so a few weeks into this, I'm now letting people know. I figured out, okay, I've got to let my boss know, because if I have to get surgery and so on, I don't know, I'm going to be out of the office. I don't know what's going on. And I was managing a team of 40 people at the time.
I was going to ask you about, like, did everything else in your life just melt away? Because I often think when something like this, if something like this were to happen to me, or something like really like jarring, I just feel like I would abandon every other responsibility I have. Or do you go into like self-preservation mode and you just kind of execute as you were?
So it's funny you asked that, because when I think back on it, what happened was, like, I literally had parallel lives going. Like, I had work, I had the cancer issue I was dealing with, I had my personal emotions to deal with, I don't remember if I took a sleep pattern change. I just remember like waking up early all the time. And there's another line too, like that kind of went through this. Like, there's an emotional part that just weaves through all of them regardless. There are moments I had to walk away from a meeting or not, just go to the bathroom and sit for a bit and deep breath. Okay, you'll deal with the cancer part when you're done with this meeting. You'll deal with the cancer part after you talk to so-and-so,
Were you thinking long-term at all? Or was it just like, okay, today I'm dealing with this appointment, and like just kind of step by step, or were you thinking?
I wasn't thinking long-term. I hadn't at that point. Now we're like a few weeks into this. I was not thinking long-term. I hadn't even I'd heard that one doctor who said mastectomy. That's it. I don't even think I even thought of chemo at the time. Like these thoughts didn't come. So you asked about the surgeons. So that was the one surgeon. Then I saw another surgeon at and that guy, he gave me like this moment of like hope. And he goes, and remember at this point, I've not Googled anything. I'm just going with what these doctors are saying. It's not even occurred to me to Google stuff or look up anything or do any reading. He goes, this doctor says, oh, I think we can do a lumpectomy here. I'm like, oh, a lumpectomy. Well, I've heard of this. So, tell me about it. He goes, so we go in, we excise this, we get clean margins. I remember all these words, and he's explaining it to me. And I'm in my mind, I remember this thought. I'm like, will there be like will my breast have like this concave, inward is concave, right? Concave part to it. Like, what is my breast going to look like if they just take a lump out? Like, I'm thinking a lump, And I asked this question, I said, and I remember this so vividly. I asked, well, what about disfiguring my breast? Will I be disfigured? And he kind of bristled and looked at me and said, I don't disfigure my patients. Oh, really? Like, who the hell are you? And it was like,
it's my breasts. I'm sorry. Like,
I don't disfigure. And I'm like, and he probably didn't even mean it like that, but you know what? Doctor, God complex, whatever, I'm done. I'm out of here. I left that. And I think it was the first time I experienced being mad. I'm like, fuck you. Like, no, I don't. What if it happened? Whatever. I don't. Mm-hmm. And after him, I went to the third guy. And this guy, I always tell, this guy just such a good doctor. I mean, you talk about bedside manners. You talk about a doctor who's honest, who's transparent, who's not belittling you like that doctor did, like I felt he did, who's not telling you he's going to chop off your boob. And he had I did break down with this doctor, and he's explaining to me, he actually drew a picture for me. He was the first doctor who actually sat down in front of me. And he said, so he drew the breast for me. He goes, this is what you have, and so on. And we could do a lumpectomy, but understand that we might not have clean margins. And at that point, I'm like, can you explain clean margins to me? He spent so much time with me. He explained clean margins. He explained what the breast looks like, where my cancer is right now. What they have to check, what a sentinel node is, where the nodes are, why this is actually a good stage I'm in. And he had this magic trick. Out of nowhere appeared a Kleenex box. I swear to you, that Kleenex box was not on the table when we started. And I guess at some point I started like sniffling or whatever. And I was like, wow. So he was the doctor I ended up going with. He also asked me, I saw him a few times later, and I'm jumping ahead here, but I saw him obviously for everything else I needed up until now. I still see him. But the first few times I would go in, he goes, "Is there anyone? Do you have anyone with me?" And I went to all these appointments alone. And it wasn't because, I just went on my own. They were in the middle of the day, business day, etc. And that's the time.
Just another thing you had to deal with that day.
Exactly. And like you have the emotional moment when you're there, but you walk out, you clean the tears, and you go to meetings. No one knows. But you would always ask me, "Is anyone with you? Is anyone waiting with you?" And I would say no, and he'd be okay. And one time I got indignant. I'm like, "Doctor, you keep asking me that. It's not that I don't have a support system. I just need to do this on my own. I'm busy." And he goes, "No, that's really not why I'm asking you that. I'm asking you that because a lot of times I sit down with the patient and I explain everything to her or him. And then they say, 'Wait a minute, I'm going to get my husband who's in the waiting room or my wife in the waiting room.' And then I have to repeat everything again." So he's like, and it was clearly like him being efficient and me becoming indignant. I mean, and I really appreciate it. I was like, "Oh, that's why. Oh, okay. You don't think I'm all by myself then. You're not."
He's like, I just don't want to repeat myself.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's how I went about finding my doctors. I hated two and loved one.
So the one you loved, what prognosis did he give you? What did he tell you?
So he did not say what that other doctor said, which is, "This is a mastectomy right away." He didn't do anything like that. He said, "Look, we can do a lumpectomy, but understand that if we don't have clean margins, we might have to go in again." He also said he ordered another MRI of some sort. I don't know what was different about this one, but he ordered an MRI. So he said, "But I want to see more." So I remember he went while that MRI was getting processed or whatever. I went away for the weekend and did some thinking and soul searching. And then I started reading. That's the weekend I started reading. And that's when I told myself, when you come back from that weekend, I went and spent the weekend at my mom's place just away. And I set goals for myself. So as a normal part of my life, just like I like, by Tuesday, I'm going to have this done. And then if I don't have it done, I reassess. Why don't I have that done? So it was basically, look, okay, they've talked to you about mastectomies, about lumpectomy, etc. So when I'm going to make that decision this weekend, I'm going to read, figure it out, and see what I'm comfortable with. I know that by that Monday, I had decided I did not want to go through the trouble of a lumpectomy, only if there's a chance I'd have to go through it again. I also was like, I'm way too young to have to do this again. I don't. And then I started reading up on what are the chances of recurrence, things that were new to me at this point, like the lumpectomy versus mastectomy, and the chance of recurrence in a lumpectomy was far higher.
Did they tell you what stage you were at?
Yes. They said, I know it was like 0 to 1. It was early.
So very, very early.
Very, very early. Like it hadn't left the ducts.
It's a good thing you did that breast test.
Yes. I can't stress enough. Feel your boobies. And by the time I got back to New York, I said I had decided I was going to have the mastectomy, and I was already reading up on recovery, what you do, like what are the steps on mastectomy. And here I went into full swing mode of research. But I was also aware that I'm a novice. I don't know anything I'm reading. I have to double check with my doctor.
That's just such an important point, though, I think, to stress, because as I'm listening to you tell the story, it's like you move from space to space, like you hear about it, you process, like it's all like a space to space thing. You get to research mode. But so many people with the internet nowadays, I think, like can easily fall off a cliff without remembering to anchor themselves to that very like thing of like, I'm reading this, don't let it overtake everything, and like go back and reinforce it with the person who's the most knowledgeable about it.
Right. And like allowing the doctors to make the decisions, not so much make the decisions, but find the information for you and not to speculate.
Right. But now if you say about the thing about allowing the doctors to make the decisions, or one thing that floored me in this whole process was how much decision-making power I had. Like to me, you go to the doctor with a cold or an earache, so they give you something, you take it. You don't ask, they don't say, would you prefer this antibiotic or that antibiotic? They're like, you're allergic to this, you're taking this. But with this breast cancer, they really, like, this was new to me. The doctor and his team and so on truly made me a part of the decision-making process. And I'm sure they were guiding me along as we went, but I really felt like I was in this with them. And it gave me, when I think back on it now, a sense of control. Because I mean, like you're about to hand over part of your body, and right. So for some reason, I remember what day of the week this was. It was a Wednesday. I was leaving work. It was around 6:30, and my doctor, who we had I think at that point we had scheduled a date. No, we hadn't scheduled a date yet. Calls me on my walk home. I remember exactly where I was. And he says, I've reviewed the MRI and I'm going to recommend. And I said, doctor, don't say anything. I know what I want to do. And he was like, okay. And I told him, I said, we're doing a mastectomy. I just went on. I'm like, I don't want to go through any of that. I don't have the time for this bullshit. I want it done. And we're going to take the next step with me and tell me how you can reconstruct this, because I don't want a flat chest and I don't want to be lopsided, but I'm doing a mastectomy. And this doctor's he's just such a smooth person, and compassionate. And he said, I'm glad you said that. That's where I was going to lead with this. If you still wanted, after reviewing your MRI, if you still wanted to go lumpectomy, I wanted to warn you that we might have to go back in. I don't recall where it was, but it was, and I think he said it was an aggressive cancer. And I would imagine it has to be an aggressive cancer if you're 32 and healthy and it still managed to get through all the fail safes. But that's how I decided with the mastectomy, and the doctor agreed with me. The doctors don't tell you what to do, by the way, how to prepare. There's none of that. They just like, okay, the next thing you have to do now is make your appointment. So that was the first point of preparation. I made my appointment. Was I'll never forget it. And I made my appointment and I just went back to work. I just went back to work and started reading. And then that's when my reading kicks in even more. Like now I've got, it's almost like my brain freed. There was a goal I was getting to and I had steps to get there on my own. And I just started reading up. The only other part of this, like the preparation that was significant, was understanding that it's 6 weeks off after that. They give you 6 weeks. So I'm like, okay, 6 weeks, I'll be out for 6 weeks. Office has to know. I need a backup to fill in my spot. And then I thought, I don't want people to think, I didn't want them thinking I had some horrific disease or something. I mean, I did, but I didn't want them thinking it. So, and given what it was and my age, I talked to my HR person with whom I became pretty good friends after this, because her mother actually was going through breast cancer, was diagnosed 3 weeks before me. And I told her, and I had a team of women, one man was on my team, that was it. And I talked to her about it, and I said, I want to tell them this is the reason I'm going to be out for 6 weeks. And then we'll figure out who can back me up. So we had one of the meetings, we had weekly meetings we had, I said it. And I don't recall choking up or tearing up. I just told them, and everybody was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And this is exactly what I don't like and I hate, but I understand, like, what else is somebody going to say? And of course, once that happens, it spreads. People start talking to each other and on the same things I never imagined. You think everybody's going to know and that's it. But like it spread throughout the office.
I hear myself say things sometimes in reaction, and I immediately like, I would kill that person if they said that to me in that situation. Yeah. You hear yourself do it, but it's like, so like, I think it's just honestly like, ugh.
But one thing I learned, Alyssa, through this is that what people say might come out awkward, and they might not mean it the way it hit your ears, but they meant it it came from their heart, and as awkward as, I remember one woman said something to her, I just want to hang up on her, and I'll tell you that in a minute. But before that, it's just like, as shocking and awkward as it is for me to hear that I have cancer and then to tell someone, that person on the other end is hearing it for the first time too. So like I learned a new sense of communication with people and understanding that I had to put myself in the hearer or the listener's shoes, or ears rather.
Did you find yourself having to sympathize with them?
Sometimes, yeah. Some people, like, you're just like, oh, okay, weirdo. You move on, like, yeah, thank you. You did, but for the most part, yeah, you kind of find yourself in a moment where you have to console people. Hey, it's okay. Look at what I'm doing. There's a way out of this. I'm getting this done. This one woman called me at work, and I knew who she was. She was somebody I dealt with and so on, but I wasn't close to her. And she just said, I'm so sorry. I heard about your cancer diagnosis. And I was like, thank you for calling me. I really appreciate it. And she goes, and you're young. You'll get through this. What do you need breasts for? What, breastfeeding? You don't need to breastfeed. There's always you can feed babies anything with a bottle of milk. And I hadn't even thought of losing breastfeeding privileges or rights or whatever. It had never occurred to me. And it was suddenly I was hit with this. And this woman had just given birth and had another child, had 2 kids. She'd just given birth. So she was like, I guess this was like fresh on her mind. She did not mean to hurt me with what she said. I know this. But it was just an element of this I had not even ventured into. And it was suddenly, oh my God, I'll never breastfeed from this one breast. Obviously, it was just one, but it was a shock. So things like that would happen. I had one guy, I was dating this guy at the time, and he obviously knew. And I met him at a bar, and he was like, listen, I didn't even know this was going to happen. He goes, my friend so-and-so, he's a doctor. I told him, and he'd like to talk to you. And I'm like, what are you telling people for? Like, but that's when you realize people do things to help you and don't necessarily think they might be upsetting you or embarrassing you or hurting you. And I was so upset with that. But things like that happen. So what did I do to prepare? Work-wise, I set everything up for work, got my backup in place. I read, stumbled upon things I went back to the doctors for to ask them, and then went to surgery.
How did you mentally prepare for losing your breasts? Did you say goodbye to them?
I did. And this happened like maybe a week or so before the surgery. I was like, oh my God, my body's never going to look the same again. And I was out shopping or out with my friend shopping, and cute dress. And it was like a halter top dress. And at the time I hadn't quite registered how the reconstructive surgery will happen, what my breasts will look like. And I just kept thinking something's going to be different. I didn't really think too much about it. But I remember thinking, I'll never be able to wear a dress like that. Complete falsehood, obviously. I had no idea I can wear a dress like that now and be very, happy with myself. But and I was like, oh my God, my breast. And that's when it hit me, like my body is not going to look the same. And am I going to recognize it? So I don't know how this thought came to me, but I remember I was at the beach and I thought, I'm going to do a photo shoot of my breasts. I just want to remember them. It's just me. It's just mine. And I just want to recognize them. So, yeah. So I talked to an in-law of mine who I knew had like creative friends and so on, because I didn't want to like go online, find somebody and all. I wanted it to be private and stay just between me and one other person. And she knew a photographer who was an events photographer. But I was like, could you ask if she'd do that? And I wanted it to be a woman. It was really important to me that it was a woman. I didn't want them to be sexual pictures. I just wanted a picture of my breast. And she put me in touch with her. And it's funny because knowing I was going to be talking to you guys today, I went back and looked at these. I did a quick photo shoot with her again. Now, when I think back on this, I'm like, why didn't I luxuriate and take time for things? I didn't. I literally set up an hour with her after work. I did it. And I had a sister coming in to visit that evening. I did it. And then I met with my sister. I did it. I got home, I met with my sister and did everything and never told my sister about it. But I just sat down and it was like taking my top off and I was wearing a dress and my bra off. I was very uncomfortable. And she was like, I've never done this before. You tell me what you want. And I'm like, just start taking pictures. Just so lie this way, lie that way. And I have like about, I think it was like 50 pictures, something like that. And I had agreed with her, it would be $500 for the session. And when we were done, I was going to give it to her in cash. And she was like, don't worry about it. Yeah, she didn't take the money. And then when she developed the pictures, she also gave me the negatives and said, these are for you. And God, I don't know where the negatives are now, but I do have the pictures. And I look at them now and then, but it's been a while since I've looked at them until last night when I started looking at them. And I was like, oh, kind of like them. They were pretty, but I'm so happy right now too that it's the nostalgia is a strange nostalgia.
Yeah.
But I'm happy. I'm really, really happy I did that because it does help me when I need to remind myself that they were pretty. And I don't know what it reminds me of, honestly. I don't even know if it was just they were pretty. They were just when you just want to see yourself, it's like looking at yourself when you were young.
Like, yeah, that's me. That's my body. That's
yeah.
You can't always see it in the moment when you are yourself. And so having that to like look back on, I can just imagine it like, it's, it totally makes sense.
So this was like a week before your first surgery, right?
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. And it was about a week.
They, before we jump into your surgery, they didn't tell you that you needed chemo or radiation or anything like that?
So they said there's a chance I might need radiation if I did a lumpectomy. Oh, no. Actually, that reminds me, I totally forgot about this. If I did a lumpectomy, they would have recommended radiation. And that was one of the reasons I went on for the mastectomy because I did not, if there was an option not to have radiation, I didn't want it. So thank you for bringing that up. I totally forgot about that.
Yeah, that stuff is brutal.
I didn't want it. I just didn't. And it was like, you have this, like, take my whole breast and no radiation, or take part of it and I might have cancer again and I have to have radiation. So I didn't, that was one of the factors that helped me decide to go with the mastectomy. But then he had told me that the chances of me needing chemo were slim. And the reason was that the cancer was so small and they were sure it would be gone if they took the whole breast. I did meet with an oncologist afterwards. They did assess me, and there was like, there's all those tamoxifen pills and so on they could put you on, but they basically were like, we just will monitor you. You don't need it. Like I think they really believe they'd taken it all out, because it had, so there's things I learned, like there's a sentinel node, which I think of as the sentry, the guarding node lymph here, and then there's the lymph nodes, and mine it was still in the ducts, like it hadn't gone anywhere. It hadn't gotten out. Feel your boobies. That's why I found it. I just have to keep throwing it in.
So tell me about your first surgery. They did the mastectomy and reconstruction all in one go, right?
Yep, all in one go. So can I step back right before my first surgery? Because I did something that I think was like, I'm so proud of myself now at this many years later that I stumbled upon this and did it. But in my random reading, I had moved into reading also not just books, but things on the internet at this point, because I felt like I had a good base. But I read about this study in Italy about nipple sparing. I'm like, nipple sparing? What is that? And that there are options to have a mastectomy and keep your nipples. So I thought this would be gone. My whole breast would be gone. Like I would just have that scar across. And when I read up on this, so I had to go in for my whatever they call it, when you have to sign all those papers and stuff, and basically
pre-op.
Yeah, all that stuff. Like basically, like if I die on the table, it's okay. I agree, it's fine. And it was the plastic surgeon I was doing this with, because remember now, like you said, I was going to do the mastectomy, which is the breast tissue removal, and the plastic surgery, which was the reconstruction. They would start the reconstruction right after that in the same go. So I was doing my pre-op work with the plastic surgeon. I said, what is your take on nipple sparing? And he said, well, that's something your breast surgeon needs to recommend. If he says, you're a candidate for it, then yeah, we can do that. Sure. I was like, oh, hold on. I'm not signing anything. I need to go see the breast surgeon. This is days before. So I go to the breast surgeon and I'm like mad. Like, this is the doctor I chose and I liked it. He was just the best doctor. And I get there, I'm like, what about nipple sparing? And he's like, what about it? And I'm like, am I a candidate? Because I can't remember how he responded, but it was kind of like, I don't know, you might be, we don't know, possibly. And at that point, I'm like, this poor doctor, I don't even think, he probably doesn't even remember, but I felt like I was in interrogation mode at that point. I'm like, well, how many breast surgeries have you done in your career? And I think he rattled off like, I don't know how many thousands.
This was like the day before your surgery, right?
A few days, yeah. Like it was a Monday and my surgery was Thursday, something like that. And he goes, well, how, and I asked him then, and how many of those were nipple sparing? And he goes, very few. I'm like, a percentage. And he gives me this tiny little percentage and I'm in shock. Like, you've done thousands and only this many were nipple sparing. So now I'm humbled a little bit. And I'm like, well, why? He goes, because not everybody's a candidate. Usually like cancer is usually found in older women. I'm like, okay, I'm not old. All right. So, and something about the circulation and your circulatory system isn't as good when you're older. And often sometimes it's done and the nipple doesn't stay, it just falls off, it dries up. I'm using very layman terms here, but that's what I understood from him.
But wait, do they just not know until you're in the surgery? Or like, how do they, when does he know?
Yes. Yeah. Here's how it is. So he basically said, yeah. So it was like, I'm like responding, I'm like, I'm young. My circulation is good. So why am I not a candidate? He said, you could be. Would you like us to do this? And this is where I'm telling you, where you are a part of the decision making, but no one told me about this one. I would have not. So I was like, yes, definitely. If I can keep my nipples, I want to keep them. He goes, okay. So your question, Alyssa, how do they know and when do they know that they can do it? He said, we have to do a biopsy of the nipple, a scrape of the nipple, the inside of the nipple before, while we're in there. And he said, you might come out without a nipple, you might have one. If the biopsy comes back clean, they do it right there. If the biopsy comes back clean, we'll spare it. So that was part of my preparation. So I'm like, okay, I want to do nipple sparing. He goes, okay, then we'll do that. So now I go back to my other surgeon. I signed all the papers. I'm like, okay, I'm good to go.
So the next question is, you've gone back, you've signed your papers, and now you're about to go in. Tell me about the procedure. What did they do?
Can I just tell you, they put me on this bed that had these warm bubbles. Like it was oh my God, I felt like I was in heaven. I was scared, but I was numb. But I laid down on, and it was warm. It was so warm. It was just so, there were like 12 people in that room. And I'm a person, I walked in there, I'm like, what are your names? And they all told me their names. But that bed, I still remember it. And anytime I go in for any kind of surgery, I'm like, is there that? The bubbles are like, no. I've never had it again, except for these surgeries. But what the idea was that the one doctor goes in, the breast surgeon goes in and does the mastectomy. And then the plastic surgeon comes in after him. And what he does is they put an expander in, and it has, I don't know how many cc's of saline solution, I think it is. And like, sew you up. And at some point you wake up, and I do have a scar from that. And I thought it'd be like across my breast, but they did it only on the outside side of the breast. Like if you looked at me head on, you couldn't necessarily tell that I had a reconstruction.
That's kind of like a scar. Like a scar right there. I don't know.
Well, now I have the other one that matches too. So
how did you feel when you woke up?
I'm a fan of symmetry.
I'm not. See, I am not. It's really funny, except when it comes to breasts. I am not a fan, but when it comes to breasts, I am. How did I feel when I woke up?
Yeah.
I felt like, oh my God, it was that's anybody who's been through surgery, it's that feeling. And the first thing I said, I saw my mother there, sitting there, and I said, did they keep the nipple? And she said, yes. I'm so happy. I was so happy.
That's incredible.
And I was like, what does it look like? Because it was like all covered up. Like, what does it look like? She goes, it's small. Your breast is smaller than the other one. But I knew that they were going to be expanding it because apparently the skin shrinks as soon as you remove the tissue from it. And a couple of days later, or maybe the next day, the morphine was so nice. The morphine was just, it was like pain, click, gone. I was in a lot of pain, but I was going to say my old boss who had recommended this doctor to me called me the next day to check on me. And I was like, oh my God, you wait till you see it. It looks so good. And my mother was like, what? I was so high. I was like, he later told me, he goes, you promised me you'd show it to me. I'm like, I did not. He's like, you said it. And Mom's like, yep, you did. Wait till you see it.
Honestly, like everyone says ridiculous things before and after surgery. Like there's got to be a book somewhere of like all the crazy things people have said.
So I think I was in the hospital for a couple of days, and then I went home.
What did it look like?
Bruised, and I had drains. I forgot about this. I had there were 3 drains coming out of the side of my like one up above my breast, one a couple under my arm, I think. And they do that so the fluid drains so it doesn't build up inside you, and you have to squeeze them out. And I wouldn't even look at them. I was always a squeamish person. I am not so squeamish now. I'm still squeamish, but not as I was. Because by the time I was done with all of my surgeries, I knew it by heart. I could do those things. I could clean out those drains myself. I needed no help. But that first one, I would not even look at. And luckily, my mom was with me for the first week. So she would do it for me. The nurse showed her how to do it. And I would literally, it was twice a day, and you have to measure and so on. So we would go in there, I'd take my top off, and she would squeeze them out. And we did that and you measure it, you send it in. And I think we did that for a week, and then they take the drains out and you're good. But it was bruised and tender. And the nipple was like flat. Like it was like, the areola was still the same, but that was all bruised. They were stitching over it because they cut over the areola as well. And by the way, just ladies, the areola heals so beautifully. Like if I really dig, I can see where the scar is, but it's not like regular skin, like your skin on the side. Like the scarring there is hardly visible. But the nipple was very flat and just like flaccid. It just was like, like I think I was just tired because it sure is not flat now.
Were you worried about the results? Like, how did you feel when you looked at what it looked like right after your surgery?
Okay, you're going to think this is weird because that first one, I really didn't look at it too much. Once I saw the bruising and how ugly it was, I just didn't care to look at it much. It was just, and you're tired. I was tired. I slept. I slept a lot. Now I know like the body needs to sleep the body sleeps to heal, but I slept a lot and I was tired and I didn't really look at it until later, like a couple weeks later, maybe after my post-op.
Were you like consuming content at this time? I'm just so curious. And when I say that, I mean like, were you watching shows or like?
I might have been, but I don't remember. This was 2008, so it wasn't like I could stream Netflix, you know?
Yeah.
Netflix
was still on discs.
Yeah, you're still sending.
Yeah, I guess. I'm just curious if it was like you were surrounding yourself with like positive, like not just people, but like every little thing, or if you were, I don't know, you know.
I don't recall being conscious of making decisions to for positivity. People were sending me flowers. I got this book called, I think it was called Uplift by my team. I come from a big family, and it's just like, and one of my brother actually said, I didn't know how to talk to you about this. I didn't know how to say anything to you. So please don't think that by not saying anything, he's like, I just didn't know. And to me, it was that level of transparency or honesty where it's like, I just didn't know how to talk to you. I'm like, it helped me understand what people on the support side was going through as well. I don't have this, you had mentioned about Netflix we were, on disc back then. My little sister sent me, it's just right before the surgery, sent me, back then we didn't have Spotify and you didn't share playlists. We made discs of music on, I don't know what it was, Napster or whatever. I don't know what we were playing music from, but it was a disc of two discs of music she knew I would like. And honestly, she's going to kill me if she hears this, I don't have the discs. I do have the cover of one of the discs. I still remember she wrote by hand the names of the songs. And one of the songs on there was Pretty or You're So Pretty by the Cranberries. And that song just made me cry because I was like, it was the sweetest thing. And so she has bigger boobs than me. And like it was always that thing where she's my younger sister, has bigger boobs and mine are little boobs, and she was like, and there used to be this like contention between us, and bras and stuff and all that. And we would make jokes to each other. And her note to me, and that is, I'm so sorry for all the food, for making fun of your breasts all this time, or for every joke I made about your breasts. And you don't want her to be sorry. You just want it's just like, it's okay. I actually enjoyed all those jokes. But that song and that cover of that CD are still with me. And it's just like things like that happen when you talk about like you're surrounded by the positivity. Yeah, I don't know that I was emitting positivity or consciously seeking it, but certainly I was very, very fortunate and lucky to have a good support system around me that just reached out in moments.
So after you get the expander taken out, you have the implant put in, and we don't have to go into heavy detail about that, but you also got an implant, and you said you also got an implant in your other breast too, right?
Yeah. So when they finish, like, so they keep adding, I think I want like every couple of weeks to get CCs, more fluid put into it to continue to expand it. And it was a little bigger than the other side. They didn't have them exact. So what the surgeon did was he put a tiny little implant under the right breast to match the sizing. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you something, that scar to this day is still vivid. It's been years, but it's still vivid. But yeah, so that matched them up, and that scar felt like hell. I would go to him. I had to go to him a few times. He would inject some kind of steroid into it that would alleviate the pain. But yeah, no, to match the two breasts, I had a little implant put in the right side, and that was actually quite a thought process for me. And I asked a few people, like, would you willingly, not for medical reasons, but this was clearly vanity to me, do something like that, go under the knife? Like, to me, it was anathema. I would never go under the knife for vanity reasons. I would never do plastic surgery. So to me, this was a moment of vanity. And I remember one friend who said, I would do it. You want them to match. You didn't, like, it was like people would say things, you didn't ask for that cancer. No one does. But so I did it. I went ahead and did it. I was like, at least now they match, size wise.
Did you get an option to change your size, or did you want to stick with
the
size
God, yes.
you had?
Yeah. So the doctor goes, so my plastic surgeon asked me, he's like, would you like to go a little bigger? And I was like, what? Bigger? Why would I? You can go bigger. You can do that. And he goes, well, yeah, I'm going to put the implant in. And he has these like 4 or 5 different sizes of implants in front of me. And he brings them out and shows them to me. And I'm like, I don't even want to be here. I just want to be the same way I was when I came in. I don't want a memory of this. I don't want to go bigger. And I was like, just make me a C, the C cup I am. And he goes, well, you're a B. And I'm like, what? What? And he goes, yeah, B. And I was like, I'm a C. No, you're a B. And like, I'm like, you're gonna argue with me? Now this is a breast surgery, plastic surgery. You know, like, you're gonna argue with me? Who the hell are you? It's my breast. I'm like, I'm a C. I wear a 34C bra. And he goes, all right, B plus. And the way he said it, like, he wasn't an arrogant doctor. He has a snarky sense of humor. Like, and I just laughed. And we had a little moment there. And I'm like, okay, I'll go with the B plus. Make me a B plus if that's what I am. So I guess with him, I'm a B plus. So yeah, I did have the option. I didn't want it.
So you have the expander taken out, then you have the implant put in. But what happened after that? You heal, and then the next year you had another surgery, right?
Yep. Like a year and a half later, had another surgery, or a little less than that. So I still have to do mammograms, and I still have to do breast exams because the right side's still there. So, and they're a little more, but they follow you, these doctors, once you've had cancer. They want to make sure. So they're aggressive about you getting that mammogram. So I go in to do the mammogram. Apparently they found something. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding. And while we're waiting for the results to come out, he said, I asked the doctor, you know, is this something now that I'm always going to have to go through? Like, if you think you saw something, I have to do another thing like this. And he said, basically, you're in that population now. So yes, if we suspect something and you've had cancer before, we will check this more aggressively, you know, like, and think you might have cancer. So I'm yet again planning a trip with my mother to travel when this comes up. And I said, well, when am I going to get the results? And he said, I think it was like next week or something. I was like, I don't have next week. I'm leaving, and I want to know now. And he said, well, I can always call you. I'm like, well, where I'm going to be, you probably won't be able to call me. It's really remote. It was like in a flash of a moment, I just decided, nope, I'm not going to, if you're going to do this to me every year, I'm not doing it. I don't have time for this bullshit. So I said, you know what? Don't even bother. Let's just do a prophylactic mastectomy. At this point, I'm very knowledgeable. I know all about mastectomies. I even know prophylactic mastectomy. I'm like, no, we're doing it. He goes, and I don't remember how he kind of like tried to dissuade me, but I recall him saying something to the effect of, there's no reason to remove healthy tissue. Like, there's no reason to do that. Let's see what the results are. And I said, I don't care what the results are. I'm telling you, I'm having a prophylactic mastectomy. I want this gone. Like, but you guys have made me a decision maker in this. You know, you gave me that power. I want it. So this again, why some doctors and some people are just really good. He compromised with me. He said, okay, I'm going to have them speed up the results. And here's where I learned that doctors can get those results faster than a week if they want.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes. Okay. I am so glad to know that information because I'm a negotiator. So if I'm ever in a situation, I use this knowledge for my own personal.
They can. They can speed up. They can put yours ahead of anyone else and get that thing. Like, so because I was like, I'm getting on a plane in a few days and I've made this decision. And he's like, tell you what, we'll see if we can get the results sooner. And I'll give you a call when I get, I think it was a day later, 2 days later. Cause I remember I was packing. So it was like the day before my trip. And he calls me and says, okay, good news. It's benign. I'm like, great. I'm really happy to hear that. I'm still doing it. And this is the negotiating part where we come to this compromise. And he says, tell you what, when you come back, you're going away for 2 weeks. When you come back, or 3 weeks, whatever it was, you think about it while you're going. When you come back, and if you're still of the same mind, we'll do it. And my poor mother, yet again, going through.
She's not going to go on any trips with you anymore.
I hope you broke the streak eventually, and if you haven't, you need to.
Well, there's only 2 boobs, so hopefully it's done.
True.
So it was 2 trips. So we got back Christmas Day. I remember that, and we just slept. We were so jet lagged. And the next day was a Monday, if I recall. I called the doctor, and I'm like, I'm ready. Let's plan it. He goes, why don't you come? Why don't we meet? So I met him. We chatted, and we even walked out. I was his last patient to see, and we even walked out of the office together. But he said, okay, if this is what you want to do, then we'll do it. We're ready. We'll set the appointment. Wow. I think he just wanted me to be sure. Like, I'd made the decision in the office, a split decision right there. And I think he just wanted me to be sure when I think back.
Right, because you can't take it back, you know.
Right, exactly. And I remember he told me as we were walking out, he goes, in my experience, women who make this decision feel much more empowered. And he's right. It did empower me. And like, he knew what he was talking about, but I was just like innocent and they were naive still, you know, I hadn't had it yet.
Did you feel like you were kind of back in control?
Yes. Oh yeah. Oh, now it's like set the date. plan towards it. Yep. But tell work I'm going to be out for this many things. I do not have cancer, guys. It's prophylactic surgery. Anybody who wants to know about it, come talk to me. Like, yeah.
So I know you had another surgery down the line, and we will get to that. But before I talk about your other surgery, tell me some ways that your life changed. It can be something as small as, how you bought bras or clothes, or something as big as like how sex or relationships changed before and after you had these implants put in.
So the first thing that happened to me with respect to clothing and bras was I realized that I needed a bra that fit both breasts, because one moved naturally and one didn't. And there was nothing out there unless you wanted some like old lady thing. Like you couldn't. I remember I used to get my bras at Bloomingdale's, or back then when I cared enough, like for Victoria's Secret. I don't care now for them, but
I feel like every guest we have at some point has to tell us that they hate Victoria's Secret.
So, and I remember going to Bloomingdale's again. My mother was with me, and I have a really good mother. I just want to tell you, I have an awesome mom. So she was with me, and this one young lady, and it wasn't her fault. She didn't know about this stuff, and I'm asking, I'm like, this is the problem. And then she said, I don't know how, but somehow she connected me with another one. Apparently Bloomingdale's had people who specialize in mastectomy bras or something like that. There was something like that. You might want to look into it as a bra designer over there, like see what but I recall something about this. And so she showed me some bras, but again, it wasn't like I had one hard breast with this implant, and one breast that just did its normal thing, like flopped when you ran or ran down the stairs, and this other one just sat there. If you gained weight, this one got fat, that one didn't, An implant was great for the keeping them the same size as long as I didn't get fat. So that was one thing, and it was so frustrating. It was so frustrating. So I ended up, what I started doing was I would get a bra. Oh my God, I haven't thought about this in forever. I would buy a bra that fit as close as possible, and then I would fill. I also started wearing I loved scarves, and I wore scarves before, but I started wearing a lot of strategically placed scarves around my chest because my cleavage was shit. I had horrible cleavage. It was shaping itself and doing things in ways you'd never even thought of. Like that's something I didn't have control over. It was frustrating. It was so frustrating. So that was when it was lopsided. And then when I had the prophylactic surgery, that was nice because the implants were exactly the same size, but they were both hard still. Neither one responded to temperature change. The nipples were always hard, and they hurt. They not hurt as in pressure pain, or they would my chest itched all the time. Like I would scratch my chest raw while I was asleep, and during the day I could control myself.
What X is describing is a symptom of post-mastectomy pain syndrome. Although it was first discovered in mastectomy patients, it can occur after lumpectomies as well. About 20 to 30% of patients experience PMPS after breast cancer surgery, and the symptoms include dysesthesia or chronic nerve pain in the chest wall, armpit, or arm. It can occur to varying degrees, and X had a particularly severe case of it. It typically presents as pain, tingling, numbness, shooting pains, unbearable itching, and other symptoms that can't be alleviated and don't go away over time.
It was awful. And it wasn't until I was speaking as an aside to a dermatologist, and I mentioned this, and he said, that sounds like dysesthesia. Whoa, I have a new word to go look up. So I go look this up, and I realized, because the other doctors had just said to me, it's just the nerves, they've been cut off, they're just nubs now, they're trying to regrow. If I understand correctly, nerves at that stage don't regrow. I'm not sure. I don't think they regenerate, but we can look that up. And the first time this happened, and I had scratched myself raw, and I went to the doctor, and he's like, whoa, what happened? You look like you landed in a rose bush. One of the things I changed in my life was keeping my nails very, very short and blunt. I would get a manicure and I would make sure that they put the nail polish on the tips as well, so it would make them very dull, so I couldn't scratch. I mean, save going to bed with hand mitts on. I suffered through this for the whole time until the final surgery, the last one.
Was there any way to treat it? Was there anything you could do for it?
There were things where they wanted me to go on this thing where, oh my God, this medication that changes your reroute, I don't know, change sensation. I can't remember what it was, but I was like, no, I will suffer through this. I don't want to go on to something that can screw up my body. So really no, that I'm aware of. And the thing is that I had a severe case of it. My doctor said if this happens, they expect it in some, sometimes, but I had a really, really severe case of it. Often it'll start and then it'll dissipate over time. Mine didn't. It just did not.
So some years down the line, you had another surgery. Can you tell me how your breast changed in that time and why you made the decision for your next surgery?
Oh, can I actually go back and tell you something else about how my life changed?
Yeah.
Just one crucial thing that I think is important for anybody who's listening, who might be going through this. So I was dating somebody at the time who stuck around with me until the first surgery and then just disappeared. He just, I don't know, hadn't been dating very long, but he just disappeared. So this happened. And I of course was like, he couldn't take it, my breasts, all this and all, but I kind of like started focusing on my boobs, and I didn't date anybody for like the whole time I was getting the surgery, all the surgeries for those 2 years. It's one thing that did happen to me was my sense of confidence in myself as a woman. I never thought about my breasts as being a core part of my identity. They are to me. I realized this when I didn't have them. And when they were just like fake breasts, and I couldn't even call them breasts. I would often refer to them as just these things. At some point when I was back, life was normal again for me, internally. And I was like, oh, maybe I can start dating again. And let's just say for a good 6, 7, 8 years, I had a number of first dates. It was all I'd reached that point where I'm like, should I mention this? Is this person worthy of knowing the scars that are on my body? Do I want to go through this? Are they going to run away if they find out I had cancer? Are they going to think, no, she's not free of cancer, she's going to get it again, and I'll get stuck with her? And that stopped me from really, truly so during my 30s, I really didn't date much beyond maybe a first or second date, because it really wasn't, I was scared to reveal that part of me to a man who would judge my beauty. You meet someone, it's like we're attracted to people sometimes before we even open our mouths, and it's physical, and I was just so, I knew my body, I knew myself before this, and I did everything I could to fix it. And suddenly I felt like I was broken still. And what didn't help me when I look back on it now was that I thought they were ugly. I did not like it. I could hardly look at my own breasts after that with it. And over time, my body changed. I gained weight. Depression set in for a little bit. I saw a therapist for this to help me with it. I was working. I was managing my life. I was getting my master's degree. I was doing all that. But there was this part of me. Remember how I said I work in parallel lines for my life? I did not like my body. I was so unhappy. And when I gained weight, the breasts didn't grow. So you can imagine you're getting bigger. You're like, even your shoulders look big when you gain weight, but my breasts stayed the same size. Couple that with, I think into year 4 or 5, it seemed like they were shriveling. No bra could fit them. No bra, nothing I tried. And when it was a cupped bra or with foam in it, my breasts just sat there and they were ugly. So then you were leading to the final surgery I had. That's what led me there. I was in a miserable place. I really was. And I kept a good facade. Like I didn't want anybody to ever know what was underneath there or what I was suffering. I didn't like myself. I did not like my body. I was not happy.
Did you have any inkling that this might happen to your implants, that they might change? They didn't tell you?
No. I didn't, and I don't know that they knew this could happen. Like I knew that your body could reject implants. I didn't know if that's what was happening to me. Honestly, there's moments now where I think back and no one's told me, this is my own conclusion. I really think I might've been allergic to those implants, because once they were out, I felt I didn't have it again. It came back now and then. That dysesthesia, that weird sensation. Let's
start talking about your next surgery.
Yeah, so my last surgery. So this was in 2016, so 8 years later after my first one. And what happened was I was so unhappy with my breasts. And I had my yearly checkup with my doctor. Honestly, I don't know why I didn't go to him sooner, but I just figured this is the way they looked. This is it, So this was the regular breast surgeon. I took my bra off and I said, I'm not happy. And this is that really good doctor who just listens to you. And I just broke down. I'm like, what happened? These don't look like how they started. And he basically was like, this can happen. And I don't remember what he explained to me and so on, but he's like, but we could do that the flap surgery for you if you wanted, and that could help you. And I was like, you mean that surgery I couldn't do early on? So what I didn't say, and I totally forgot about, was one of the ways they can reconstruct you if they're not going to use implants is the flap surgery, where they just, it's like it's the exact same, well, make it simpler. They basically take your belly fat and put it in your boobs. That's it. I was too skinny. I didn't have enough fat. For once in my life, someone says I'm too skinny, and it's not to my advantage. I was too skinny. Yeah, right. Like I was like so healthy back then, and I was very proud of my body. I just worked on it. It wasn't like I wasn't skinny. Honestly, I just didn't have enough fat on my belly. I mean, I don't know. Maybe they could take it from my butt or my thigh. I'm sure there was enough fat there, but I guess they don't take it from there.
Like I have other places you can pick from.
Right. But now I had gained weight, and it was 6 years later, and it was like, and he goes, basically just, we'll set you up with the plastic surgeon again, and he can assess you and we can take it from here, but we can do this. We can make these your own. And I'm excited. I'm so happy. So I see the plastic surgeon, and I'll never forget the moment I'm sitting like, look, I've gained all this weight. Do you think we could do this? Here's what I want to do. And he goes, show me your belly. And I'm like, huh? I want to see what I have to work with. I'm like, oh, I don't want you to see my belly. It's really big.
Yeah, can you just take it without looking? I would be the
same. This is the B+ guy, right?
Yes, this is the B+ guy. This is right. And so so I'm like, all right, here it is. But it's not always like this. I just gained a lot of weight. I really did. But anyway, so I never saw a more satisfied look on that man's face when he saw my belly. He goes, oh, we can do this. Like, you've got enough fat that we can do this.
What a mix of feelings, though. It's like, I'm so happy, but also like, really?
Yeah, like I was upset I was too skinny, and now I'm happy I'm fat. So that's what we did. So we set up the appointment for my surgery. It was a 10-hour surgery, where basically they went in, and it's the same, the way he explained it to me, it's the same procedure for the belly that they do for liposuction, but instead of throwing away the fat, they keep it and they put it in your boobs. So they take the fat from there, and obviously this is a rudimentary way of explaining it, and they remove your implants. In my case, they remove my implants and they replace it with that fat, and they reroute all the blood vessels. It is the coolest thing. Like, to think they're like magic hands in there rerouting blood vessels, making sure, it's amazing. I have like nothing but awe for these doctors who do this stuff. It just amazes me. So I come out of the thing, when I wake up, I have this in a Sharpie across my chest that says no pressure. And they have to make sure all the blood vessels connect and stay, and they don't want anything stopping it, and the blood flow works. And I've got, so that was that. And
I like the multiple layers of that, though, like no pressure. Right? It's not just for them. I feel like that's also for you. Like,
true.
You can take from that as well. It's like an opportunity.
Yeah.
But also, like, I don't know how I would feel waking up and seeing a message like that. It would be like if you woke up and it was like, this side up.
But the message was for the people taking care of me. I think it wasn't for me. Like, I looked and I saw, what they did was, I remember they would come in morning and night, and they would check the blood flow, the arterial blood flow, and then how the vein blood flow. And I was like, well, what's the difference? And the nurse was so much fun. She was like, well, see, the arteries sound this way. You hear it? Now the veins sound this way. Hear that? So I had that surgery. I think I was in the hospital for, again, a couple of days. They don't keep you in too long if you don't need to stay. And that's a nice thing, because I always want to heal in my home. Like, home to me is like, if I'm sick, I need to be at home to get better. Mm-hmm. With that, I had the same scars on both sides of my breast, and drains. And I thought the incision was going to be like 3 or 4 inches. It is from hip to hip.
Oh,
wow. Hip to hip. And I just keep imagining, like, when I laid down on that bubbly bed that they put me on, he just took that, was it knife or scissors, just cut across. Like, oh my God, you literally were in there cutting in there and taking my fat out. I kind of had like a lumpy part on my belly that wasn't like the fat in here. Oh, and they also told me that they repositioned my nipple. They repositioned my belly button, apparently. Because I guess when they take the fat out, your stomach is now smaller, or your belly area is smaller. So they must have removed some skin. I would love to talk to my doctor about this. I never did, but they have to. I remember him saying, we repositioned your belly button.
I want someone to make a New York Times, or not New York Times, the New Yorker comic out of this scenario. Sorry, we moved your belly button. I just picture it with like a little Band-Aid in one spot, and then the belly button is like maybe just above the Band-Aid or something. I don't know.
So how was this round different than the last time? How did you feel after?
Happy. Oh, I was so happy. Like there was the uncertainty that I had felt throughout the other ones, or that followed me throughout those, wasn't here. It was like, these breasts, they were pretty from the moment I saw them. They were, I loved them. And 3 days into being home, I was changing I put on a white t-shirt, and I had leaned over, and the light hit me in a certain way. And my mom was with me again. My mom goes, hold it there. Hold it right there. And I said, what? She gets her camera and she goes, you're going to love this. And she snaps a picture. I still have this picture. It is a silhouette of my breast with the nipples hard, but it's a silhouette of my breast. And it's just the most beautiful thing. Like I tell you, like what changed for me was a love of myself. They flop now, like when I run. I lost weight after this. And I was, a few years later, I just decided I'm not going to be fat anymore. I don't want it. I've never been this way. I was able to lose the weight that changed.
You had to gain weight though in order to have that surgery. That's like what's sort of like weird when you look back on.
Earlier when you were talking about your first implants, you said you didn't even really think of them as your breasts. You called them these things.
Yeah. Yep.
Did you still have that disassociation now, or are they yours?
No. That you know what? That the word you said, dissociation, is perfect. That's exactly how it was before that. No, I love these things now. I love my breasts. They're not things. They're really anatomically a part of me. Like I'm talking to you now, and I'm holding them, like, and they move, and they fit in a bra, and they reshape when you lay down. Like before, I laid on my side. They didn't like lie with you. They just stood there. You know, they move now. They lie. They're supple. They're
breasts.
They're breasts.
Yeah.
And I still can't feel, like, I still don't have that sensation. I don't I don't respond to cold or hot. My nipples are always hard. But I love them. And I have cleavage. Oh, I have cleavage. It's so nice. It's so nice. Like real cleavage.
So that answers my question now. My next question, are you happier now than you were 10 years ago? Are you in a better place?
I'm in a much, much better place than I've had. Like I look at my breasts now. I love them. I never looked at them before. And when I did, it was like, ugh, yeah.
I can really hear the change in your voice too when you talk about how you feel now versus what they used to look like.
Yeah.
Did you ever consider yourself a survivor?
I hated the word survivor. Hated it. Hated that connection. I didn't like that word. I never wanted to. I just didn't want it. I think it connected me too much to cancer. I did not like the word survivor. I wanted to be a person who had something and got over it. She's done. And I remember the example I gave somebody once where it was like, you get strep throat, you take the medication, you do what you need, you heal, you move on. No one says you survived strep throat. No one says you survived. You know, you just move on. I did not like that word. Yeah, I didn't want it. The victimhood I didn't like it. It's one of the reasons I actually left the job I was in when I had this. After my second surgery, was that everybody knew. And while it didn't really matter that everybody knew, you got that look like, oh. So I just didn't, I moved on to jobs where like new people didn't know me, and I didn't have that quote unquote stigma. And I know it's not a stigma, but it felt like it.
You had a name for yourself, didn't you? You had something you called yourself?
I think it was something like I was ex-cancer, like that. It kind of like decapitated or excised cancer from me by saying that. And I actually like the letter X too. But yeah, so just call me that. Call me an ex-cancer person. Don't call me a survivor if you want to associate, if you want to bring that cancer thing to me. But by the way, I don't have it anymore. And you know what's funny is like I never thought that, oh, I have so much to live for. That wasn't the driving thing. It's like, I can't deal with this crap. I don't have time for this. That's the way my mindset was.
If you could give one piece of advice to someone going through something like this, what would it be?
Research, read. You have the power to make those decisions with the doctors. Just read and research.
If you're living with breast cancer yourself, taking care of someone with breast cancer, or just want to know more about the topic, X really recommends Dr. Susan Love's Breast Book. First published in 1990, it's been through several updated editions since then, and X says the book was a real eye-opener for her. She says she was wiser in her understanding of cancer because of that book. It helped her, and if you're going through something like this, maybe it can help you too.
I thought you were going to ask me if I was going to give anybody advice about their breasts, and I was ready for that question.
Well, what is your advice about breasts?
Feel your boobies. That's simple. Feel your boobies.
What word do you use most often for breasts?
Breasts.
What's your least favorite word for breasts?
Titties. Disgusting.
You were ready with that.
No, I was about titties. I've listened to some of your podcasts, so.
It's not a pleasant word.
No,
you know?
It's very derogatory. It's very demeaning.
Mm-hmm.
Like tits is okay. Tits doesn't bother me as much, but titties, tatas doesn't bother me.
Do you remember your first bra?
I remember my two first bras. I got them together. Yeah, they were lacy. I remember they were tiny. They were so tiny. But yes, my mom took me to this store. I don't remember what it was. And I think it was right before I got my period. Like right before. And my breasts were tiny. Like I've heard stories where women say their breasts just popped out. Mine didn't. Mine took their time. And but I got these two. She kept calling them trainer bras. And I hated that she was calling them trainer bras. I wanted bras. I was very happy to have my first bra. It was a cream one, a nude colored one, and a white one. And I guarded them. I loved them. I felt
it sounds like your mom has really been there for you from start to finish with this whole journey.
From the beginning and now still.
Yeah.
She's just awesome.
What type of bra, if any, do you prefer and why?
Ooh, I am wearing the best bra. This bra is so lovely. It's I just discovered it a couple of years ago. It's my third love, and it's called the Uplift Plunge Bra. And it's just so comfortable. It does have underwire. I like underwire for the most part. But it just fits perfectly and is mesh with, I guess they're foam cups. I don't know what they're, but that's the bra I love.
I love the uplift and plunge.
Yes.
Uplift and we plunge.
Yeah.
It makes me think of almost like
that's what it does. If you think about it, it really does. Like it lifts you and then it lets you plunge.
yes. It's very like Reese Witherspoon in Legally Blonde, where like the bend and snap. I feel like in my head it's now like
Yeah.
We lift and we plunge.
What is your favorite thing or something interesting about your breasts?
I love my cleavage.
I love that answer.
Yeah.
I just love my cleavage. And I have two more things.
You can have as many as you want.
My nipples are always hard. I know that, but I love them. They're sacred to me and I love it. I will never be able to use them for what they were like to breastfeed or anything, but fuck that. I love them. And I guess that's it. Just cleavage.
What do you think is the hardest part of having breasts?
Well, I've done the hardest part. The hardest part is everything I just went through. It's the cancer. That's the hardest part for me. And like there are women who will say like heavy, big breasts, they're heavy. My back, I never had any of those. Like I didn't have that experience. And I don't even know that if you asked me this question 10 years ago, I would have had an answer, or 13 years ago, I would have had an answer. But it's the hardest part about having breasts is the cancer part.
What do you wish that those who without breasts knew about breasts?
I have never even thought about this question. Like I have never considered this. Like
let's say you were talking to like a dude, right? Just like run of the mill dude. It's a first date. And he's saying like, there is nothing hard about having breasts. Like, I wish I had breasts. I'd look at them all day. What is something that you would want him to know?
Well, this again, this is like caveat this with the fact that I don't have this anymore, but the one thing that was, I honestly hated this about having breasts and this is something somebody without this would know. And again, has everything to being female, was my breasts hurt when I had my period. They hurt. They really, really hurt. They were so tender, so sensitive. And like it was like I literally had 2 days of pain with that. So that would be my answer to that. I don't have that today because I do have my period, but I don't have sensation in my breasts. That's one nice thing that came out of having cancer.
thank you so much for joining us today. This was such a good conversation. And unless there's anything else you wanted to share, I think that's it for us.
We've covered a lot, but I do have one thing I'd like to give a shout out to all the caretakers who have, and the people who form support systems for anyone going through breast cancer, or for that matter, any other kind of cancer. But the caretakers, I think the stress I went through, my mom went through too from her side, my sisters, my brothers, my friends. So just a shout out to those who care and take care.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. This was really therapeutic and good. I don't know the last time I talked so openly about the whole
The Very Breast Podcast Ever was written, produced, and recorded by Nadia Figueroa and Alyssa McHugh. Cover art by Alyssa McHugh. Opening music by Margaret Tran. Check her out on Spotify. For episode transcripts and sources, please visit our website at theverybreastpodcastever.com. Do you have questions? Corrections? Do you want to tell us your breast story? Get in touch with us on Instagram at theverybreastpod or email us at theverybreastpodcastever@gmail.com. If you like our podcast, please be sure to rate, review, and subscribe, share with your breasties, and consider donating to our Patreon. Thanks for listening. Now go out and make today the best day ever.